Hello and welcome to another episode of Great Britons. And again, got a wonderful one for you today. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. If you do so, then please do click the like button. It does help us here to grow the channel and to release some more great content to you good people. So thank you for joining us. Sit back, relax, and let's have a good old chat about Brian Epstein, Beatles manager, of course, and manager of a few other top acts as well. So here we go. We're going to be talking about Brian Epstein, Beatles manager. And I guess sort of academically, he didn't sort of get on too well at school, in the local schools. And his parents were actually relatively well off, I would say. They got a very successful business in Liverpool. They owned a couple of sort of furniture stores. They owned a musical instrument store, a record shop as well. So, I mean, they were doing okay. And they probably felt he would benefit from a private education. So he was actually sent to a couple of boarding schools to hopefully improve on his sort of academic grades. He went to college and learned to play the violin there. Not that sort of made a great difference to him, but I'm going to say another string to his bow, but it would have been a corny thing to say, wouldn't it? Anyway, he finished at boarding school, finished at college, and then went into the family business as a record shop owner. I mean, it's kind of strange the way it sort of turned out for him, because he'd not been sort of formally trained in management, if you like, in terms of the music industry anyway. Although it's fair to say he was clearly, the kind of guy who'd got a very natural aptitude for business. Shortly after his time there working in the record shop, he was actually conscripted into the army for his national service. So he actually joined the army for a while. He wasn't there very long, I think maybe just over a year or so. But due to some psychiatric problems he was suffering with, a group of psychiatrists collectively agreed that he ought to be discharged on medical grounds, which he was. He then returned to Liverpool and, continued to manage in the family's record store. He made a real success of it. Actually, he was very, very interested in it, very good at it, and the business really did thrive. However, even though, like I said, he was doing very well, he'd always wanted to get into acting. And so he left Liverpool and went down to London and managed to join RADA and be sort of formally trained in the skills of acting. However, again, he'd only been there about a year or so, and he kind of felt, well, no, this isn't for me. I prefer the business life rather than, sort of this acting profession. So he sort of dropped out of that and realised that he was better off in the business world. So he went back to Liverpool, basically. And like I said, he was working extremely hard with the record shop, and that soon became two record shops. So he enlisted some help to manage those. But like I said, he really was kind of go-ahead type of guy, that understood the business and knew how to make it thrive. In sort of around about 1961, that's when he first met the Beatles at the Cavern Club where they were performing. I'm sure he would have met other people as well, because I think Cilla Black was working there at the time as well. But anyway, he met the Beatles for the first time there, and they'd had sort of 2 or 3 meetings, and and he was kind of mulling it over in his own mind as to, whether that was something he wanted to get into in terms of starting to manage a rock band. The local rag at the time was a publication called the Mersey Beat, and the Beatles did actually feature in that from time to time. And because of his interest in music, Brian began writing a regular column in the Mersey Beat, and this also helped to establish his name amongst the local community, at least, as being, from a musical perspective, the guy in the know. Like I said, he had a few different sort of meetings with the Beatles to kind of chew things. Around 1962, they eventually got to a point where there was kind of broad agreement that, the Beatles were going to sign with him. So basically, Brian presented a 5-year contract to the band. They signed up for the contract. So this is obviously featuring Pete Best as drummer and not Ringo Starr, who not to join them at that stage. So the boys were under 21 at the time. There was only John that was over 21, but the other 3 were under 21. So they all required, at that time, the permission of their parents to enter into a contract. And that was okay. The parents kind of signed up for it. There was also a separate contract drawn up specifically for Lennon and McCartney, because they were doing, obviously, 90% or more of the writing. So the main contract was for things like, selling of records and personal appearances, whereas the subsequent contract was, as I said, purely for Lennon and McCartney's writings. He actually managed them until he passed away in 1967. So, he had a good number of years with them. Now, the next bit is something that may surprise some of you, because I think it's easy for younger people to just think it would have been extremely easy for them to go anywhere and get signed up. In fact, that was just not the case. In fact, some of the big record labels at the time, so you got labels like Columbia, Pi Records, Philips Records, Oriole, and Decca Records, all rejected the Beatles. Just didn't want to know at all. And indeed, there were 3 of the EMI producers, because EMI was a very big label at the time. I think it still is. But 3 of the producers with EMI just said, no, don't want to touch him. It was felt that they weren't polished enough, I think, and just not up to it. Uh, an interesting comment that came from one of them. It's weird this because when you sort of look back, nobody ever wants to admit to being the fool that turned them down. I mean, literally nobody wants to put their hand up to this one. I wonder why. But one comment was made that guitar-based groups are on their way out, so we don't want to touch them. Yeah, nice one, mate. Nice one. Yeah, it's quite incredible, isn't it? Really, some of this stuff. Um, the thing that I admire most, I think, about Brian Epstein is his absolutely dogged determination. Because it seems to me as he was really one of the few people at the professional level I'm talking about now. I mean, audiences love the Beatles, but all these kind of so-called professionals, uh, you know, couldn't see the future, couldn't see the potential of what the Beatles were all about. And it was only Brian really that had got this absolute excitement about them. To say, wow, these are going to be the biggest thing ever. Um, and he'd organised a meeting with George Martin of VMI. And again, George was a little bit, oh, well, not sure, not sure. And he had to, nag the life out of him, basically, to get a recording contract. And a typical kind of startup contract for EMI at that time was to sign a band up for 3 singles, which is what happened. They signed up for 3 singles. Now, the money involved will absolutely shock you. To give you some sort of comparison, back in the olden days of the mid-60s, a 7-inch vinyl single would have cost 6 and 3 in old money. In today's money, that's 31 pence. So a 7-inch single, 31p. Okay. Under the contract, the Beatles were paid 1 penny in old money. So that's a half a p in new money per single. That's all, half a p. Can you believe it? And they got to share that 4 ways. And to make matters worse, any singles that were sold outside of the UK, the amount was halved. So I guess this shows you the massive difference between, if you like, what the internet has delivered for music publishing. And I know there's lots of artists will say, oh, well, we're losing out to downloads and everything else and streaming and. Well, yeah, I know you are, but I mean, if you look at the upside of how relatively easy it is for a new band in particular, new signing, to create something and expose it to the world and start selling. I mean, the internet has transformed things. Whereas in the 60s, these big record companies had got an absolute stranglehold on the industry and could put forward these ridiculous contracts. As you can see, there's a lot of profit going somewhere when they're selling a single for 6 and 3 and paying out a penny, but they just got an absolute stranglehold on distribution. So yeah, there you go. So like I said, it was basically take it or leave it for the Beatles because nobody else wanted to touch them. So in round about 1962, the drummer Pete Best was fired by Brian and replaced by Ringo Starr. There was just general animosity really between Pete Best and the rest of the boys, sort of rubbing each other up the wrong way basically. And you simply can't afford to have that when you're trying to build the type of thing that they were trying to build, successful brand name and worldwide acceptance, all the rest of it. So it just didn't work out. There was obviously contractually a responsibility still to Pete Best, and so Brian sort of made some inquiries, and basically it was agreed that Pete would join the Mersey Beats, which he did, and I think he, don't know too much about that other than it seemed to suit him better than the aggravation that was going on with the Beatles at the time. As I've said, Brian went to RADA and learned a little bit about presentation and all this kind of thing, and acting and how you should present yourself. And I think this was one of the reasons that when he kind of looked at the Beatles, he didn't like the way they were dressed, the way they messed around on stage, the way they could be eating snacks or smoking on stage, dressed in all this leatherware basically. And he just wanted an entirely different persona for them. And he kind of, he'd seen these, we've all seen the old photographs of the Beatle jackets and the Beatle suits and everything, including the haircuts and everything. And he actually, took them to the tailors and described how they got a look and everything. And it was all very strict. This was for personal appearances. And it was for, any interviews on TV or anything like that. They got to look the part. And I think even one or two members of the band, McCartney in particular, thought, yeah, this guy, he knows what he's doing. This is a better look for us. It looks professional, And I think, they all came to ultimately appreciate what Brian did for them. Basically, whilst Brian was sort of working with the Beatles and getting them established, he also signed up a few other local acts because he was a Liverpool lad himself. So he signed up Jerry and the Pacemakers, Billy J. Kramer and the Dakotas, and Cilla Black. Now, Cilla's first single was actually a Lennon and McCartney track called Love of the Loved, which it did chart, but it was pretty disappointing. It was, I don't know, I think it was in about, number 34 or something silly like that. It was fairly low in the chart, so as a debut single, it was kind of disappointing. But where I'm very, very impressed with Brian Epstein is his kind of lateral thinking. And he kind of thought, well, what the chart was lacking at the time was some real, strong, sort of female ballads. And basically, he'd heard an American song which he felt, could be covered, and hopefully, kind of do a better job of it, basically, and particularly make it for a British audience. And the track, Anyone Who Had a Heart, which was recorded and produced by George Martin. was just an absolutely massive number one hit for Scylla. It really was. And even today, I think I'm right in saying it is the biggest selling uh, single by a female artist. It really was absolutely brilliant, and completely and utterly changed the way Scylla wanted to present herself. She saw herself as a rock and roll artist, and Brian saw her much more as this kind of softer artist, performing these kind of big ballads. So for a guy that had not worked in the industry, by God, he got some great insights. He really had. Absolutely terrific guy, and I think well worthy of inclusion on this Great Britain's site. So I hope you agree with me. There's a lot been said about him online. His addiction to drugs. He'd been to rehab several times to try and get himself straight, but unsuccessfully, I'm afraid. His sexuality was always in the news. And generally, negative comments. I'm not going to talk about them. I think that once people pass away, of course, you've got no right of reply. So people can say what the hell they like about you and almost get away with it. And I really don't think that it's a good state of affairs. I really don't. He's got his faults. Nobody's perfect. And he made a lot of money. I'm not denying that he did made a lot of money, but he believed in them, in the Beatles and his other acts. He believed in them in a way that, as I've previously explained, that many other professionals in the business did not. And he fought tooth and nail for them. So why shouldn't he make a few bob out of it? You know what I mean? Good luck to him. So that's it from me. As I said, I'm certainly not gonna say anything ill of the guy. He deserves his part in British pop history. He gave us something that's just think about it. It may not have happened. It's easy for people to say, "Oh yeah, regardless, the Beatles were bound to make it happen and bound to be successful." If you look at history and look at what was going on, I don't know. There's no evidence to show that had Brian not been there, that it would have inevitably happened. The history doesn't support that. So I do hope you've enjoyed that. If you have, then please click the like button. I've really enjoyed doing this session on Brian. I mean, terrific guy, and definitely deserves to be included in our Great Britons. So thank you very much for your time. Be good, and I'll catch up with you soon. Bye for now.